come in, it's cold. Take a seat by the fire as we tell some ghostly War Master stories in future phantoms. Ooh.
Mm. Oh, got a bit of a shiver there. Was that from the cold or was that from the ghostly intro that we just put out? Future Phantoms came out November last year and was the final box set produced, script edited, directed in the War Master range by Scott Hancock, who has been at the helm of this series since its very beginnings, really, hasn't he? Played
Well,
a
it
huge
was only
part.
meant to be the one box set, but because it proved to be incredibly popular,
Yeah.
it's had a life.
Yeah, I mean, the popularity is hardly any surprise. I think what came as big a surprise to Big Finish was how much Derek Jacobi enjoyed it and how much he wanted to do more.
Mm.
So here he is, 11 box sets later, still going strong. There is more on the way, done by Rob Valentine. But yeah, this is the final one by Scott Hancock. And you know what? By the end, it did feel like the end of a chapter, I suppose. I think the way it ends off
Yes,
is rather neat, really.
because the War Master has a particular formula, I would say.
I think he's had two different eras, really.
Yeah.
You know, beyond that first Only the Good box set, you've got five box sets that are sort of one long story told by two writers. And then after that, they switched up the format a bit and did a more overarching idea or concept for a box set, but with each story done by a different writer and having its own beginning, middle, and end. And I think that's where the range started to slip a bit.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I much prefer the original format to what they went for in the later box sets. It feels part of that was COVID related. It was like, oh, we'll just write what we can and record what we can, and then
We'll try and get an
Well,
overall
piece it all
umbrella
together.
theme.
piece it all
For
together
it.
at some point later. Yeah, and what you end up with sometimes there is box sets like Self Defense, the one with the 10th Doctor, where you have a final story written and done first, and then they're sort of backtracking
It's
to build
reverse
up to
engineered,
it.
isn't it?
Yeah, which can work, but in that example in particular, I don't think it really did. It just sort of felt like the whole box set was treading water until David Tennant finally comes along.
Yes.
But they've mixed it up a little bit more since then. Like with the box set before this, the Rogue Encounters box set, you had just a straight up anthology release. Like that was four separate stories. Here, you've got the Master sitting by the fire in this strange room at St. Simeon's College that shouldn't exist. You know, it just sort of a door appears randomly every once in a while, and students are invited to come on in, sit by the fire, and listen to the Master tell them a ghost story. And so that's your framework here. And the Master ends up appearing in all these stories as well. Often you got Derek Jacobi putting on a funny little accent there.
Little
too.
Yorkshire or a Brummie accent.
Yeah. Sometimes it slips as well, but you forgive it because it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like it's the War Master himself putting on a voice.
Yeah.
It's a rather neat format that does pay off in the end.
I think for this one, when you've got a voice like Derek Jacobi, it's perfect for this story time. You know, listening to this at night before bed, it's a macabre bedtime story, and I think this box set, it's very much exploring the sandbox of what makes a ghost story and what's creepy and what's not. You know, it's sort of playing around with that, and I like that. And I guess I just want to address this, but I mentioned this in my top 10 that this is sort of a back to basics for me for the War Master, because like you said, self defense, I started to fall out of love with the War Master stuff. But because I like the formula of this, the sort of framework of it, I found myself really invested in this set.
Mm. I think it still follows a lot of the framework of this like, second half of Scott Hancock's era, but it's possibly the one that does it the best.
I think because
Like,
it's not conventional master causing havoc.
mm,
It's very much ambiguous that the master is involved, but it's not the master with him going, "Ah, I am the master. That's who I am."
yeah. You do get one or two stories that fit into that format of, oh, he's a nice old man, but really is, well, actually, the more I think about it, they all fit into it. But I think they're able
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
disguise it a little bit more and
Yes.
do more interesting things with it than usual. But yeah, I mean, His Close Companions is the first story written by Jonathan Barnes. It's sometimes hard placing some of these stories.
Hmm.
Like it's a because you've got
I think
two
that with the
different things
second
to
story.
place. Yeah, you've got the main narrative of it, and then you've got the framework with the master telling the story, and the framework's always moving gradually through time. But yeah, it's not always the easiest to pin down. But no, this first story was a rather neat one, I
I
think.
think I think the setting of sort of dark academia with the boarding school, this isolated boarding school with like a forest nearby, and the teachers are dabbling with the occult, and you've got this poor bit sort of a lonesome boy trying to fit in, who
Mm,
takes comfort in this nurse character who sort of knows the dark things going on underneath with this school, but she's trying to protect this student until
yeah.
they're haunted by something that is summoned, sort of haunts them for the rest of their days, really. Well, the nurse especially.
Yeah. I think this one exemplifies more than most the fact that because it's the master telling a story, you've almost got an unreliable narrator of sorts there,
Mm,
which means you can push the horror a little bit more without having to spoil it with a sci-fi explanation.
yes.
Yeah, I think that lends itself nicely across this box set, but particularly this first one uses that to its advantage. Yeah, I think on the whole, it maybe went on a bit though, which is
Yeah,
sometimes a problem. These 1 hour War Master stories, I say 1 hour, they often end up being about an
sometimes
hour,
they
10
push a bit. Yeah,
minutes.
they push a bit more than that.
The Foxglove Cylinders, though, by James Goss, I really enjoyed
It's depressing.
that. Yeah, it's the War Master ruins someone's life again, but it's done in such a creepy way, and I love the concept of the Foxglove Cylinders
Hmm.
themselves. These cylinders that are from ancient cultures,
And the
but they have,
recordings.
yeah, when stuck on it's not a gramophone, it's,
A xylophone, is it?
yes, xylophones,
No,
the
xylophone.
thing you tap on.
Is it xylograph or something like that?
It's a little musical instrument. Yeah, something like that. Phonograph.
That's
That's
it.
it.
That's it.
Yeah. When played in that, it ends up, revealing these old voices from the past, or could they be something else? It's a rather neat mystery that
Hmm.
this character gets so caught up in that they end up losing their sanity to it in some ways.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, I think it's a very creepy one, but not as
It's.
creepy as. Oh no, sorry.
I was just gonna say it's for greed. It's for the greed for knowledge is ultimately the downfall, isn't it?
But yeah, as I was saying, Foxglove Cylinders, not as creepy as The Sitter by Lizzie Hopley,
Oh,
the standout of this set.
this is what you need to listen to in a dark room because
Mm,
it's such. I think it's basic. It's a basic primordial fear, isn't it? When you think you're in a room
mm,
and you think somebody else is there, but nobody is there. But the
yeah.
sitter
It's
doesn't
like,
have.
it's where your pile of clothes are,
Yeah,
and you're looking at them in the dark and you think, that looks like a person. What is that? Yeah, it's playing on that fear.
and I love it for it, and I love the structure of it that the master, when telling the story, it's more like the master reading the file the main protagonist tells of this story of this old lady in the house.
Mm. Yeah. because he's not quite the main character in this already. I mean, in some War Master stories, he's not the main character as such, but you can always imagine his story working without the War Master.
Yeah.
You can imagine this being something else entirely. But yeah, I mean, it was funny because I didn't know this was set in Bermondsey before listening to it. And I started listening to it on the way back from London, where I'd been around Bermondsey area, which, yeah, it was worked out rather neatly. But yeah, it was one of those ones that I couldn't put down. I started it thinking, oh, I'll get through, 15, 20 minutes or so then. Yeah, I'll have other things to do or whatever. But no, I just had to keep going with it. It really gripped me.
It claws at you, to quote one of quite the horrific moments in the story.
Yeah, because in some ways, not much scary happens. It's the anticipation, the build-up of that. There are times where you're preparing yourself for a jump scare, but it doesn't come, and it just leaves you more on edge. It's an unsettling thing. I think
it's a
Lizzie Hopley, they need to get her writing more horror, because this is really where she excels. I loved Horn as well from Unit's Brave New World, the second box set of that. That was brilliant. Yeah, I think get Lizzie Hopley writing more horror. That's what I'll say. And then finally, another writer who is very familiar to all things Big Finish, really, has done some good horror before as well. Tim Foley writes Signal and I'll Come to You, which is a train mystery.
This is your classic M.R. James, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
This is like Signalman, Signal or I'll Come type vibe to it, isn't it, really?
Yeah. I mean, it's wearing that on its sleeve in the
it's not
title.
hiding it at all.
No, not at all. But yeah, so a train has disappeared in a tunnel, and a group of, not train enthusiasts, people working on the railway are heading in to investigate what has happened to it, and that's all we can really say about it without spoiling too much.
Yeah, there's some good imageries, like the tunnel being the gates of hell and the screams. Like, there's some really strong visual striking stuff that is conjured up within it,
Yeah, the mist as well. I think it's all happening at night, so you very much just imagine the characters, their lantern, and then just a little ring of light around them, and then that's it. It's just pitch darkness beyond that.
Well, the darkness is a character in itself, I feel, with this one, but it might stare back at you. Like, it's got wonderful lines like that.
Yeah, I think what lets it down is when it becomes a bit more sci-fi.
Yeah,
for me. Yeah, which it was a bit of a shame, but I think also serves a narrative purpose. Weirdly, I don't know, it's hard. Because I think it benefits the framework of the box set, where that's going in this final story, where the War Master telling all these stories, what that means. I think it benefits that and makes sense in that context. But at the same time, it does come at the cost of the story that the War Master is telling, which is it's weird to say, and might not make much sense to those who haven't listened to it. But yeah, that is the only way I can describe it, really. I don't know if you get what I'm saying there.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah. But no, on the whole, I had a good time with this box set.
Yeah, I had a really good time.
There's no dud feeler looking at these stories.
I think that's the thing with the War Master. You kind of get the clunker at the end or something like that, where it lets itself down. Whereas I feel like, yeah, this is a consistent level. If anything, I feel like each story gets better and better. But I think, yeah, Visita is the standout piece.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, overall, I'd recommend picking this one up if you're in the mood for some War Master. It's one of the good ones.
If you want some spooks and just enjoy that sort of sandpit, this is it.
Yeah, and it's something different from Big Finish. It's not your usual sci-fi box set. It's something that, because it's the War Master telling these stories that are he's almost serving as an unreliable narrator, you do drift a bit more into fantasy, I suppose, a bit more into your typical horror. And yeah, we said after listening to The Seventh Doctor and Karnaki that we were missing that. A lot of those stories were subverting horror. This is very much playing into horror's strengths. And yeah, is all the better for it.
Yeah, I
Thumbs
agree.
up from me for Future Phantom.
There we go. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.